Okay, so in last lesson, what we were doing, we did some forecasting methods, forecasting techniques. We used this, what we called scatter diagram, line of best fit. We did regression analysis. One more method of forecasting was high-low method, which we already covered in chapter number 4 or 5 of the syllabus. And what we are doing today, that is called time series analysis. Now that's a little bit long topic. We'll try to cover it completely. It's interesting. It's sometimes kind of difficult. I wouldn't call it difficult, but it is time taking. So it is called time series analysis. So a time series is a series of figures or values recorded over time. So what you do that, the following are examples of time series output at a factory each day for the last month. So what you do that, you collect data, probably for a period of monthly data, quarterly data, or annual data. This data could be about production output. It could be about sales. It could be about demand. It could be about rejections or whatever. Monthly sales could be there. It could be about retail price indices like your inflation thing. So you collect data. Now, before I move forward, let me just show you something and let me explain you how these graphs they look like. When you see sometime a graph, which it looks like a straight line going up. Actually, there is never any graph or there is never any data which moves in a perfect straight line. So it's a very difficult thing to have one straight line like this. So you actually, if you pay attention that this actually, if you see that this data is usually like this. Let me show you how it is. So this is the data which is like this. And you just, you just create a line which is an average line going through that, So this line which you see in the end, this actually has been taken from this type of data. Like some values are going up for some period. So here you've got some values and here you've got some period like months, for example. Here I've got years. Let me call it, why I'm calling it years, I will tell you. And again, I tell you that this curve which I made, which is going up and down in some form of waves, this also is actually taken from this type of thing. If I make it a perfect thing. So let me show you how it works. So it is actually like this. So in reality, you've got curves which are the lines which are like this. You have seen such curves many times, on some kind of stock exchange curves or some other curves. So when you see the data from a very close perspective, let's suppose this, I'm making it on daily basis. So if you collect the daily data, it would look like this. If you collect the monthly data, which means that you are seeing it from a distance, so that would look like waves. Okay, let me erase something from here, this thing. So when you see a monthly data, like you are seeing here on daily basis, like 1st of December, 2nd of December, 3rd of December, so sometime go up, sometime go down, sometimes sales go up, then go down, etc. But in general, it is moving up. If you see it from a little bit of distance on monthly basis, it will look like this. If you watch it from quite a lot of distance, like you want to see on the yearly data, like 2010, 2011, 2014. So here you can say that sales are increasing, which means that in 2006, your sales like this, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. This is January, February, March, April, May, June. Because when you say that from year 2005 to year 2010, the sales have gone up, it does not mean that sales were continuously going up. In some months, the sales were up. In some months, the sales, they went down. But then they increased up, then they went down, they increased higher, then they went down. So this is like the daily data, the data from very close observation. I would call it microscopic view. You smooth it out. So actually what you do, you take an average from here. So you are smoothing it out. So you pass like this. So you are smoothing out the data actually. So it looks like this type of thing, a wave. And then this wave thing, you take a line, you draw it from the middle, and then it looks like this. So you should understand that any straight line, actually it has something at the back. This straight line has been taken from certain waves, and that wavy data has been taken on from some daily movements. So this is first thing which you need to understand about these curves. Now, why this data is moving up and moving down? This is what we need to understand, because you should remember that all of this, any business you take, every business has, some kind of seasons. There are some peaks, there are some troughs. In some parts, in some periods of the year, your sales are going up, then they go down. You think of any business, whether it is, you talk about winter clothing, you talk about summer clothing, you talk about cold drinks, you talk about hot drinks, you talk about education, even you talk about meat. There are times of the year when there is more demand for meat. You talk about airlines, you talk about vacations, you talk about anything. Everything has got some kind of season. So we know that your sales, your demand, and of course, if sales and demand are changing, output or production levels would also change. So usually we say that there are ups and downs. So there are different reasons for those ups and downs. One reason for increase or decrease in your demand or sale is the seasonal impact. You call it seasons. So one effect is due to season. And seasons, we know that you can have probably 2, 3, or 4 seasons in a year, and seasons we represent by S. Another thing which could be affecting your sales or demand or output, that could be cycles, which we represent by C. So season is something which is like a short period, 2 or 3 in a year. For example, you can say that 2 or 3 in a year. There could be 2 or 3 seasons in a year. Cycles are rather longer periods, over 3 years, over 2 to 3 years, over 2 to 3 years. So cycles are like, there are some things, there are some products, there are some items which naturally go up and go down in cycles of 2 or 3 years. That could be because of some some kind of depression in economy, or a boom in economy. People, their tastes are changed, their consumption patterns are changing. So cycles are rather longer period movements. And then you've got random movements. You've got random movements which we denote with R. Random movements are those things which are unexpected. These are not within our control. These are uncertainties which a business faces. For example, a sudden global crisis happen, or probably some sudden economic downturn comes up. Maybe there is flood, maybe there is some other thing, maybe there is earthquake, and some businesses are seriously impacted, whatever the reasons. But these are random things. So usually what is happening when you are making forecasting, when you are doing forecasting, you don't have a fixed number. What you forecast are always variables. You remember that we forecast variable. If something is fixed, we don't need to forecast. If you've got a constant demand of 10,000 units per month, you don't forecast. That's a constant demand. You only forecast when you know that your value is a variable quantity, and those variable quantities are changing. And why they are changing? Because of the seasonal variations, you call them variation, because of the cyclical impacts, and because of the random items. So these are 3 reasons. So we say that whatever, so one more word we will introduce here. We use that word, we call it in this, your trend, time series analysis, we use the word, we call it trend. Trend means the overall general movement, how it is moving. If I have to see the trend from here, from this data, if I have to see the trend, so this is actually the trend, which means that although there are some times, there are some periods when your demand or sales is going up, then it goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down. But in general, the trend is increasing, because every time when it rises, then it falls. But it does not fall to a lower level. And then it goes up, and then it slightly falls down, then it goes further up, and then it slightly goes down. So you can say that overall the trend is going up. So this line is called the trend line. So trend line is like an average line which is passing through the data. So this is some kind of vocabulary which I wanted you to learn before we start the topic. So now we are going to start the topic. We need to by using this your time series topic, by using time series method, we will do forecasting. And when we do forecasting, we need to consider that we have got something which is called trend. So it is going up or going down. And then that trend actually is an average value, and we have to calculate the real value, the forecasted value. So let's start seeing it says. So what it says. So if you say that time series trend, so this is the data which is going up and down like this, and there is a line which is going through in the middle. This is the average line, and this average line is called the trend line. We can incorporate all 4 features by finding. So what are those components of time series? You've got trend line, which is called T, seasonal variations S, cyclical variations are C, and random variations are R. We can incorporate all 4 features by finding actual time series. So Y would be the item which you want to forecast. Probably it is sales. So your sales, they depend on the trend. What is a general trend? Plus the seasonal impact, plus the cyclical effect, plus the random effect. But to make reasonably accurate forecast, the 4 must be isolated. So what we are going to focus here, that because these 2 things, random is not in our control, we ignore random. We don't talk about random because this is something which we cannot measure, which we cannot calculate, which we cannot predict. This is something which is uncertain. It could suddenly happen. So we are not doing forecasting for random things. Then comes cyclical. This is also something which is a longer period thing. We will ignore this thing also for the time being. So what we would say that our business, our sales, they depend on the overall trend and the seasonal variation. So these 2 things we will consider. We will calculate our trend line, and we will calculate the seasonal variations. And we have got 2 models here. We call it additive model and multiplicative model. So in case of your additive model, you have Y is equal to T plus S. And when you have multiplicative model, you say Y, the sales demand, is equal to trend multiplied by the seasonal variation. So trend plus seasonal variations, or trend multiplied by the seasonal variation. So this is the general understanding. Okay. Now let's see one example. It says that we will begin by looking at how to find the trend in a time series. Trend values can be determined by a process of moving average. I will explain you the concept of moving average on an Excel sheet now. Just be patient. Just wait, give me 2 minutes and let's see. Look at these numbers, these monthly sales figures. You've got August, September, October, November, and December, and your sales are 200, 400, 400, 320, and then suddenly 1460. Okay, that's a big jump. So it's seen that business expands rapidly, but when you know that it is a Christmas card manufacturer, then you see immediately that the January sales will no doubt drop down again. So here the sales increased suddenly because it was a Christmas card manufacturing company. And of course, in December, you have a lot of sales because of the Christmas cards. And when you will go to January, the sales figure will suddenly go down. So that is something which you can see a seasonal impact, on your sales. Okay, so we just are getting some background information. Now let me go to the Excel file. I just want to introduce you to a new topic, which is, we call it, moving averages. Let me share the Excel file with you guys. Wait a minute. So here we go for Excel. Okay. I hope you can see the Excel file now, right? Okay. So let's suppose that you've got here some years and you've got here some sales. So let me write down here, say 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, 16, and 17, and 18, and 2000. Okay, let's keep it 2018. And your sales were like 325, 365, 390, 420, 470, 525, 590, I don't know, 610, 20, and 670. So if I have to find out the average sales, what we usually do to calculate average, you make a total, which is 4375, and you say that, number of years. So how many number of years do you have? You've got here the data belongs to 9 years data. And then you can say that average sales are, 4375 divided by 9. You say that your average sales are 486. So if your average sales are 486, that on average during the last 9 years, on average you have been doing sales of $486,000. So if we have to predict the sales for 2019, can you say that your sales in next year would be 486? Because you say that this is my average sales. So I think that next year it will be 486. Or in the next 2-3 years, the total sale will be based on this average. That would not be very accurate to say. It is not very helpful to say. You know why? Because this sale number 486, which you calculated the average, it actually includes a lot of data from past, because it's a data which has been collected from year 2010. And in 2010 our sales were very little. Since 2010 we have grown a lot. We are not doing 400 anymore. We have crossed this barrier of 400. We have moved to 525, 590, 620, 670. I somehow expected here some number like 700 plus. I don't expect this number. So this average which you have taken 486, this average itself is under question, because within this, when you calculated this average, you have included these numbers which now have become irrelevant. They are non-representative numbers for 2019. So how to counter, how to challenge this issue of the historical old data? What you use a method which is called moving averages. So the method of moving averages, it goes like this. Let me create some space for that. I want to show you how it works, the moving average thing. Okay, this is the last one, and then I'll stop. So what you do, you take an average. How do you take an average? Okay, let's call it, we are calculating 4 years moving average, or let's suppose that we are doing 3 years moving average. 3 years moving average means that you make a total of these three numbers. You select these three numbers and you add them up here. You say that this is this plus this and plus this, which is 1080. You divide it with 3 because you took 3 values, and you say that the average for these 3 years, the average for first 3 years is 360. And then what you do, you ignore this number 325, you take it out, you take it away, and you add one more number from here. So one previous you just removed and you added now these 3. And then you say that, okay, the total of these 3 numbers is this one, and this is the data for 3 years, and the average is called 391. So this 391 or 360, you call it 3 years moving average, because it's an average of 3 years, and I'm calling it moving average because I'm moving the data. So now next step is that you ignore this 365. So this value you ignore, and you add one more value from below. And when you add a value from below, now you take an average of this one plus this one plus this one, and again you say 3, and then you calculate an average. So what you are doing now, this method is, now this 427, it does not include the old data belonging to 2010. This 427 is just an average of last 3 years. So this way, when you will move up, the average which you will calculate here, it will not include the old data coming back from BCs and before Christ areas. You will be finding out the average from the recent years. Now, this is one method which is called 3 years moving average. Now, imagine that if I have to make the same data, let me copy paste it here. And I say that now you don't have to calculate 3-year moving average. You have to calculate a 4-year moving average. So now I'm doing 4-year moving average. So if I have to do 4-year moving average, what you do, you take 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 years you will take, and you will take their average. Now, the thing is that when I was taking the first 3 years like this, so this was year 1, 2010, 2011, and 2012. And from these 3 numbers, the average came in front of 2011, which was the middle year. like it was like this, so it came in the middle. So this number 1080 or the number 360, they are exactly in front of year 2011, because out of 3 years, 2011 is the middle year. But when you take a moving average of 4 years, you get some problem, because the issue is that the number which you will take the average year, the average will come somewhere here. This is the average point, the middle point. So now you have to take this number, this one, plus this one, plus this one, plus this one. The number comes 1500, and I put it like 4 years, because we are doing 4-year moving average. And that's, I'd say, divided by 4, it makes 375. Now, this 375 does not lie in front of any year. It is not in front of 2011, and it is not in front of 2012. That is one issue. We will solve this issue, but let's do one more average. So what you do then next is that you remove this number and you add one more year, like 4-year moving average. So now I'm going to calculate for these 4 years, okay? And for here, this is the middle point. Here, you get the middle point here. So what do? We take this one, plus this one, plus this number, plus the 4th year, and I put 4, and then I calculate the average, which is 411. And now again, this 411, it also does not come in front of any particular year. So now what we need to do, we need to calculate moving average of moving average. Moving average of moving average, which is also called centered moving average. So this centered moving average means that you take the average of these two numbers and put it in front of here. So like I said, here I take this number plus this number. And then this is 2 years thing, so I divide this with 2. Okay, let me do it clearly so that you don't get confused. So I take this divided by 2. So I'm actually making a lot of columns. You don't need to write down 4 or 2. You can just add up, divide by 4, and directly write the result. I mean, you can find out this number directly, add and then divide by 4. But I'm just showing you so that it is detailed. But when you do it really, you don't need to show these 2 columns, these 2 columns or whatever. So now you get a number of 393. So this 393 number, this is a period. This is the average of 2000, this midpoint and this midpoint. So we took 375, 411. These are 2 numbers, so we divide with them 2 and we get 393. And now you see that 393, it is exactly in the middle. And this is exactly for 2012. So that's a representative thing. Similarly, you can move forward. For the next step, you can ignore this number. And now you can take this 4 period, like this one you will add. So you get here now 1, 2, 3, 4. I put them here in front here. This is the point I'm going to put the value. I will say year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. And I divide them with 4 and I put it here. Now this is the average. But again, this is somewhere here. And this is in fact the straight line which is in front of year number 2013. And here we will calculate average. So here you will say moving average of moving average. You take 2 years. And because this is 2 years, you divide it with 2 and you get this average. So now, so actually what I'm trying to explain you, that when you have to do it with 3 years thing, you just need to do in one step because it is an odd number. But when you do it for an even number, like 4 years or 2 years or 6 years, then your work slightly becomes difficult because you have to do it in 2 steps. In step number 1, you will calculate the moving average, which is here. So we got the moving average, but the problem is that moving average is not in front of any particular year. So therefore we need to do one more step, which we call moving average of moving average. And we take 2 years. Now you don't need to take 4. Here you took 4. Here you just take this one and this one because you just want to make a center. So this is called centered moving average or moving average of moving average. So this is one concept which you need to, learn and remember. Okay, so now you got this point of, moving average thing. So what we have learned so far, since we started this topic, we learned about, the trend, the seasons, seasonal variations, the trend line. And now we also have understood the concept of moving average. So now we are in a position to start our time series thing. So let's go back to our slides and we see how does it work. Okay, so you have to calculate. So we say that summer, autumn, so use moving average of moving average. Anyways, let me show how it works. We'll do one example. I need your attention. We are going to use a lot of number. Step one is use moving averages, to get trend and seasonal variations. So you've got periods and you've got sales. Here you have 4-period moving average. So they are giving us 4-period moving average, which means that we will have to do 2 steps, moving average of moving average, we will have to continue. And then we'll find out centered moving average, like the moving average of moving average, and that will be called our trend. Actually, your moving average or centered moving average is your trend line. And then we will calculate the seasonal variations. So we've got period like year 1, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, year 2, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, year 3, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and you get the sales. So you've got sales here 18, 60, 90, 102, 30, 72, 99, 120, and so on. Now, if you see that it is the same type of data which I was explaining you before, that what is happening, that if you see from quarter 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, your sales are increasing from January till December, from beginning to the end of the year. So sales are increasing. But then what happens that in quarter 1 next year, you go to quarter 1, after quarter 4, the quarter 1 starts and the sales, they drop down. But you pay attention that previously it was 18, now it is 30. So it drops down, but it does not come to this level of 18. Then it again starts increasing and it goes up. Like in quarter 4, last time you were at 102, now you even touch 120. So your highest point increases. Then it goes down and then it again goes up, and like this. So this is the kind of pattern it is following. And we need to find out the middle line, which will be called the trend line. But before we do that, we need to find out our moving average of moving average. So if we see that it is 4-period moving average, so if it is 4-period moving average, how it will work, you will take 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 quarters, you divide it with 4, you get 67.50. And if you notice that it comes on this line, which is the middle of quarter 2 and middle of quarter 3. So this number 67.50, it is not appearing in front of any specific quarter. It is appearing somewhere in the middle. And that tells us that we need to find out your centered moving average. And then we take the next 4 quarters, which means that you exclude 18 and you add 30. And then you take another 4 quarters, and then you take another 4 quarters, and then you go on. You should remember and you should see here that what is happening, that there is no value here and there is no value here in quarter 1 and quarter 2. Similarly, in the last period, you don't have value here and you don't have value here because you are putting the values in the middle. So these are being ignored. And we will somehow fill these values which are being ignored. Now, the thing is that these are the moving averages, but they are not centered yet. So we need to center them. So how to center them? You take these 2 and you put it in the middle. Now it becomes 69. You add 67.5 plus 70.5 divided by 2, you get 69. And this 69, this is exactly in front of quarter number 3. So you did the job. You put the number in front of the quarter. And similarly, now you have to do it for the next value, like 70.5 plus 73.5 divided by 2, and then next, and then next, and you move on. So what you have done very successfully, that you have calculated your centered moving average, and this is actually your trend line. This is actually your trend line. And then you have to calculate your seasonal variations. Like I told you that there are some variations due to seasons. So how do we calculate those variations? It is SV model. So you can say that S divided by T. S means, your seasonal variation divided by T. So how do we do that? Here you got number 90 divided by the trend. So this is your actual value 90. In that particular period, you've got 90 the actual value. The trend value, average value was 69. So you divide these 2 numbers and you get here 1.304. Similarly, you do for the next one, 102 divided by 72, 30 divided by 74, 72 divided by 78, and so on. So you calculate them. Now, what does that show you actually? What these values, these values, what do they reflect? What does that mean? Now, let me tell you how it works. Let's imagine that this was our graph, and let's imagine that this was our trend. We know that in some periods, this is the average line. This trend is the average line, and this one. In some periods, actually, your sales are more than the average. In some periods, it is less than the average. Then it is more than the average. Then it is less than the average. So this was your actual line. So at some point in time, your average is here, your trend line is here, but actual data is more. So you can say that actual data is higher. Let's suppose in the first one, if you consider for quarter 3, your actual value was 90. And at this point, the average value was 69. If you pay attention that it is 69, if I can write it down, okay? So at this particular point, the average is lower than the actual. But when you move here, so it means that the average becomes higher than the actual. Here, if you notice, for example, if I go back to quarter number 1, the actual value is 30, which is this one, lower, and the average value is 74. So trend is higher, trend is at 74, but the actual data, it goes down. So what is happening? That we need to find out a relationship. We need to find out a relationship between the actual and the trend. So we say that if this is the trend, and if these are the actual values, what is the relationship between the actual and the trend? So this is the relationship. It says that in quarter number 3, the actual value is 1.3 times of the average value. So actual value is higher, it is 1.3. In quarter number 4, it is 1.4 times, so it is 40% more than the trend. Trend is 72, average is 72, but actual is 40% more, it is 102. So how does it help us? I mean, the thing is that once we calculate these things, now how does it help us? Let me show you again, practically how does it help you. If I make this like here, and if I make a trend, and okay, let me make a smaller trend here. Okay. Okay, so what our purpose is that now, how are we going to use this method? So you already have here this type of data which is available, and you know the relationship for this and this. So what will happen? That this trend is easy to calculate. This is an average line. You can extend it, you can draw it, but you know that your real life data will not be a straight line. Real life data could be either below that point or it could be above that point. So if you are looking here, for example, you know that you want to calculate how much would be the value here on quarter number 4, let's suppose. So you know that quarter 4 comes here, and this is the value T you can find out, and you know that in quarter 4 the actual value would be higher. And how much it would be higher? Maybe it would be 30% more than the trend. Maybe it is 40% more than the trend. So if you know the relationship between the 4th quarter and the trend, then you can easily multiply, because trend line we can find out, actual we cannot. But this is what we know, that if we want to find out the actual value of quarter 4, we find out the trend value in quarter 4, and then we know that the actual value is like 40% above. It is 40% above. So we multiply that with 40% and we can forecast this thing. Similarly, when you go to, for example, 1st quarter. So if we want to find out this thing, this probably is your 1st quarter. And we know that whatever will be our average value, the trend value, the actual value will be less than that. It would be 30-40% less. So we can multiply it with, we can subtract 30-40% and whatever, and you can find this number. So this is actually the philosophy of using this time series analysis. So let me explain you some data here back again. We say that in quarter 3 the actual value is 90, but the average value was 69, So we say that the trend line is 69, the average is 69, actual is more, and therefore you've got 1.3. In quarter number 4, your average is 72, but actual is 102. So it is again more. So it means that these 2 points are above the trend line. This is, above the trend line, this type of thing. And then when you come back to quarter number 1 here, if you pay attention in quarter number 1, you've got an average of 78, but actual value, I'm sorry, for quarter 1, average is 74, but actual value is just 30, which means that actual value is 40% of the trend line. So you just need to calculate the relationship between these actual values and the trend values. And now we move forward. So what is happening? One more thing which you should pay attention, that 1.30, this is quarter 3 relationship. And then 1.22, this is also quarter 3 relationship. So you've got 2 values for quarter 3. Similarly, if you talk about quarter 4, this value is 1.41 is for quarter 4. And then here you've got 1.42. This is also for quarter 4. So now we've got some trouble. The relationship between the trend and the actual value, we've got 2 different numbers. We've got 2 values for quarter 1, 2 values for quarter 2, 2 values for quarter 3, 2 values for quarter 4. Which one should we use? Should we use 1.417 or should we use 1.429? Which one we should use? So again, we will use the same way. When we have more than one value, what we can do is that we can take an average again. So you've got average seasonal variations quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and quarter 1 and quarter 2 were blank. In year 1, Q1, Q2 was black. And then in year 2, you had all the values. And then in year 3, again, the last 2 quarters were blank. So you can now take average. You can say that average of these 2, you take like this. And you can make, round 0.4, 0.9, 1.3, 1.4, and the sum total should be 4. The sum total of these seasonal variations is 4. Okay, so now we've got average variation. So these are my seasonal variations, and I calculated the average of that. Now it is almost finished. We have almost calculated everything. We can move further. But before we move forward, what we need to see is that, average trend increase. Average trend increase. What does that mean? If I go back to the data, you see that your trend value is also increasing from 69 to 72, from 72 to 74, 78 to 81, and so on. So your trend value is increasing. So how many quarters are there? So if I have to calculate, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it is actually 8 values. So you 8 quarters, 8 minus 1. Because you always minus 1, it is like because both values are included. So actually there is an increase in 7 quarters. Like, why do I say 7? Like, this is 1, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. In 7 quarters, the trend has increased from 69 to 91. So you can say that from 69 to 91 during 7 quarters. So how much is the difference? So you can say that, from 91 to 69, it is approximately 22. The difference total is 22. And that difference is happening in 7 quarters. So something like 3 point something, 3 point something. So this is the average increase in each quarter. Because if we find out the average increase, because we are talking about that it's a straight line, then we can say that if it is increasing 3 numbers, if it is increasing 3 points every quarter, then this quarter should be something like, 94 point something. And then this should be 97. So trend line is always a straight line. If you remember, trend line is straight line. It is increasing 3, 3, 3 straight. So you have to, so you can say that this line is increasing on an average 3 points. So you can, like I told you that the trend line you have to extend. Like if this is your data, so trend line you can extend like this with the straight line relationship. So we go back there to calculate the average trend. We say that average trend increases. Trend has increased from 69 to 91.88 over 7 quarters. So we can say that quarterly increase in trend is something like 3 almost approximately. So if it is approximately 3, we say that forecast year 4 sales. Now this is the question because they gave us the data for 3 years and we have to calculate the sales in year number 4. Quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So we'll say that quarter 1, so in year 4, quarter 1, you've got trend values. You can calculate by trend values by adding 333 and you multiply it with seasonal variations and you get your forecast sales. So for quarter 1 in year 4, you say 91.88 plus 3 multiplied by 3. Now, why are we taking like 3 multiplied by 3? Let me go back to the data and I will show you why we did it. Please allow me to go back to the data, because the data which was given to us, for us, actually, if you pay attention, quarter 3, there was no value given. Quarter 4, there is no value given. And we have to start from here in year 4, quarter 1. So actually, when you have to calculate a number here at this point, this actually increasing 1 increase of 3 from here, 1 increase of 3 from here, and 1 increase 3 from here. Because there were 2 quarters which did not have any value. Yes, when you will do for quarter 2 next time, then you will only add 1 time 3. But in order to calculate value in this area, you need to add this 3 times, like 3 multiplied by 3, like 9 you have to add, because you are adding into this number 91. 91 is just quarter 2. So quarter 3 will be 91 plus 3, then what is 94 or whatever, then plus 3 and then plus 3, because these are 2 blank lines you had. So that's why when you calculate it here, so if I show you now, I'll go back there again, So here we started from 91. So 91 was quarter number 2. So this is quarter 3, then quarter 3, and then quarter 1. And the seasonal variation in quarter 1 was, and then if you pay attention, you just add 3 and then 3 and then 3. The seasonal variations which we calculated, average seasonal variations, were 0.4, 0.9, 1.3. So it said that in quarter 1, the average line is 101. Seasonal variation is 0.4, and therefore your forecast sales will be 40.4. So which means that if you have got something like this, and this is your trend line here, and this is quarter number 1, average is here, which is say 101. But in quarter 1, the actual sales are below that point here. But then it moves up and then it goes like this. In quarter 2, the trend is 104, your seasonal variations are 0.9, and therefore the actual value, the forecast value, would be 93. So we can say that this is somewhere quarter number, quarter number 2, where trend is a little bit higher, actual sales are a little bit closer because they are 90%. But then if you pay attention, that in quarter number 3, you've got trend line 107, and the seasonal variation impact is 1.3, which means that forecast sales should be 30% more than that. So here, probably you are getting quarter number 3 here. So in quarter number 3, your trend is below, your actual value should be 30% higher, and therefore forecast value is 139. And the same goes for quarter number 4. You get 154. So this method of time series analysis, it's practically very useful. It is very logical. It makes sense. The only disadvantage is that it depends on the historical data, and sometimes the market conditions change and the future cannot be predicted on past. But if you believe that the future can be predicted on past, the market conditions have not changed and the things are going, you expect the things in future as they were going in past, then this method of time series analysis is quite useful, and it could give quite accurate results, because we are taking 4 months, 4 quarter moving averages. We are not including the historical data 10 years past, and we are making the rolling data, and we got the numbers. And similarly, if you want to calculate, forecast your sales for, the quarter 1 here, in year number 5, let's suppose for year 5 quarter 1, you can make it 103, and then you will take 0.4, because this is quarter 1. and you can find out the value here. So you can move on like this. So that is all about this time series analysis. It's a little bit long topic, not very difficult, but it takes time for calculation. But it's a very important topic from your F2 point of view. Now we have left with, from this chapter forecasting, we need to use, index numbers, and that would be all with this chapter.